Testing one. One, two, two, test. 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 One, two. Test. Test. One, two.
Testing. Ladies and gentlemen, the program will begin in about 4 minutes. So if you would please mute your devices. We'll begin in about 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the beautiful campus of South Carolina State University. I'm Alex Conyers, president at this great university, and I'd like to again welcome each of you. To Commissioner Weathers, thank you so much for being here. We have members of our Board of Trustees. We're so pleased to have the Secretary of Agriculture with us today, along with Major Steve Benjamin, former mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. Today, we welcome the farmers. We welcome you for what you do, and we thank you for being here. This past month, I had 4 speaking engagements at different Veterans Day appreciations. And as I thought about you this morning, and throughout Veterans Day, we always thank our veterans for what they do. And as an American veteran, I thought about my time in Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Iraq, and I thought about the farmers and what it meant to us to wait for what we needed from you. So too often, we don't say thank you enough to our farmers. So I want to personally thank our farmers for what you do for the American people every single day. At this time, I would like to introduce the former mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, Steve Benjamin, who now serves as the Executive Director for Public Engagement at the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Benjamin.
It's so different when you grow up and you actually have friends, longtime friends who are now college presidents. Makes you feel a little bit older, a little bit older. I want to thank you, my dear longtime friend, President Conyers. Thank you so much for hosting us here. It's a real honor to be at South Carolina State University, where most of my family matriculated over the years and gone on to live fantastic lives. Thank you for the warm welcome to this beautiful campus in my family's hometown of Orangeburg, South Carolina. Also want to thank all the amazing community leaders and local farmers who I know, and ranchers as well, for participating today. We know that you're busy too, and taking the time away from your busy schedules to join us. We're humbled by it and very grateful for your partnership. I am Steve Benjamin. I serve as senior advisor to President Biden and have the privilege of running the White House Office of Public Engagement as well. As many of you know, I had the pleasure of working with a lot of you, and I served as mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, and it's great to see so many friendly faces and longtime friends and mentors, and it's always great to be back in South Carolina. The Office of Public Engagement, which I lead, manages engagement with partners and communities all across the country to ensure that you're able to take full advantage of the historic and generational investments being made through the Biden-Harris administration under the leadership of our president. That includes our rural communities. The Office of Public Engagement works closely with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and other federal agencies engage with rural communities across the country, and it's truly an honor to be here with Secretary Vilsack, who is such a champion for rural communities and a true leader in this administration. Our president believes that people should not have to leave rural communities to find opportunity the way that my parents had to well over 50 years ago. The president's vision for growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, Bidenomics, is creating job opportunities for communities across the country and ensuring that families, small businesses, and family farmers throughout rural America have the same tools that we all have, that they need to build good lives in the communities that they love. Through the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS Act, the administration is laser focused on empowering places that have historically been underinvested in by Washington. We're ensuring that rural communities have critical infrastructure and services, delivering high-speed internet, ensuring clean drinking water, and building better roads and bridges, and so much more. The investments are long overdue, and they're happening under the leadership of President Joe Biden. But we know that sustainable growth is only successful if it starts from the ground up, and that's where you all come in. To ensure the economic success of our rural communities, we need to continue to support family farmers and small businesses and develop pathways for the next generation of family farmers, ranchers, and agricultural leaders. Through President Biden's leadership, the Inflation Reduction Act is providing new tools supporting family farmers and ranchers. USDA has been implementing resources through the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides relief to financially distressed borrowers with the goal of keeping farmers farming, removing obstacles that currently prevent many borrowers from returning to their land, and improving the way that USDA approaches borrowing and servicing, loan servicing in the long term. Section 22007 of the Inflation Reduction Act directs USDA to provide financial assistance to producers who have experienced discrimination in USDA's lending program. Since the law's passage, the agency has worked diligently to design the discrimination financial assistance package in accordance with the law and with significant stakeholder input, listening very closely. To apply, borrowers have the option to apply via the e-filing portal at 22007apply.gov or submit paper-based forms via email or in-person delivery to one of the program's 30 local offices. USDA continues to work with national vendor partners and community-based organizations to make sure eligible farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners have clear information about what's available to them under leadership of this president and vice president, how to apply and where to obtain assistance with all the questions that you have at each step of the way. The application period has been extended to January 13th, 2024 to allow more time to reach and help farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners through direct, no-cost technical assistance in training sessions. The Inflation Reduction Act also provides historic investments in climate-smart agriculture and forestry programs. They'll provide new market opportunities for family farmers while providing very important climate mitigation benefits along the way that some of the great research here at SC State is investing in. It's also including funding to invest in institutions of higher education to foster the next generation of diverse agricultural professionals all across this great nation. That includes institutions like SC State, which I will tell you it was amazing. We received a fantastic presentation from the president, Dr. Whitesides, and the team. This university is leading from the front to support and recruit middle and high school students into post-secondary education programs, complete academic programs with food, agriculture, and human services to develop this true next generation of agricultural leaders. The Biden administration wants to continue to be your partner, your true partner, as we continue to implement these historic investments in rural communities in the agricultural system that benefits each and every one of us. So I hope you will not hesitate to reach out to our team at the White House Office of Public Engagement. While I lead the office, all the real work is done by my friend Will McEntee, who leads our engagement work. So if you have a simple question, reach out to me. Tough stuff, raise your hand, Will. He gets all the tough questions, okay? Will McEntee in our office. And we look forward to working with you to ensure our families have the opportunities and the places to live, work, play, prosper, to build generational wealth in the places that they love. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. My most important duty today, however, is to talk about our young leaders. And it's my real honor to introduce Kaylin Wright, who has the toughest job here. She's a USDA 1890 National Scholar, a young person leading from the front who I'm convinced we're going to be reading and hearing a whole lot about over years to come. Kaylin, come on, your turn.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to stand before you. My name is Kaylin B. Wrighton, and I am a senior agribusiness major here at South Carolina State University. Today, I have the privilege of introducing Tom Vilsack, our United States Secretary of Agriculture. Thomas J. Vilsack was confirmed as the 32nd United States Secretary of Agriculture after being nominated by President Joe Biden to return to a role where he served for 8 years under President Obama, the longest-serving member of President Obama's original cabinet. Prior to his appointment, he served 2 terms as the governor of Iowa. He served in the Iowa State Senate and also as the mayor of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. He received his bachelor's degree from Hamilton College and his law degree from Albany Law School in New York. Prior to returning to the USDA, he served as president and CEO of the U.S. Dairy Export Council from 2017 until February 2021. Under Secretary Vilsack's leadership, the United States Department of Agriculture is building back better by restoring the American economy, strengthening rural and historically underserved communities, responding to threats of climate change, creating good-paying jobs for American workers and the next generation of agricultural leaders, and investing in our kids and our families. The next voice you will hear is Tom Vilsack. Thank you.
Caitlin, thanks very, very much for that kind introduction, and more importantly, thanks for your involvement as an 1890 National Scholar. We're proud of you and proud to know that you're going to be potentially part of USDA's future and part of the food and agriculture industry's future, and we're looking forward to seeing you do great things. And it's great to be back on campus here at South Carolina State University. You know, this is an amazing HBCU that's doing remarkable work, and I've been so impressed with the level of partnerships that the university has been able to establish, not just with USDA, but with a number of other entities to expand opportunity. So it's great to be here. I had a chance to visit briefly with the team, and President Connerson assembled his team, and we got a very good presentation today about the important work that's being done on campus. Appreciate the opportunity that I have to travel with Mayor Benjamin. And always a good idea to come with a guy who understands the territory, and he certainly does. And we share a bond as former mayors. Despite what President Biden may think, I think sometimes mayors have an even tougher job than the president. And appreciate the opportunity, obviously, to be with Dr. Goldmon as well, who's served the president and the administration and me personally as a senior advisor for equity, the first such a senior advisor in the history of the Department of Agriculture, and very much value the advice and counsel that he's provided. Appreciate the commissioner being here today. Very much we have a partnership with commissioners and secretaries and directors across the country, and I know that he shares deep concern for the farmers and producers here in the state, and I hope that we are able to learn together here today. And appreciate all of you spending a few minutes of your precious time listening to the presentation I'm about ready to make. And let me just explain to you that, in a sense, democracy is sort of a two-way conversation. And we're going to have a panel discussion, and I'm going to hear, and the commissioner and I are going to hear from a lot of folks who are currently having experience with USDA programs. But I think it's important as well for me to use this opportunity to let you know what we've been doing at USDA. When I got this job, President Biden basically gave me three very specific instructions. The first instruction he gave me was that he expected his Department of Agriculture to institute at the center the value of equity, ensuring that the department worked for all people, regardless of zip code and regardless of circumstance. And I think over the course of the last almost 3 years, we've put a lot of work and effort into equity. We established an equity commission where a number of folks gave us over 60 recommendations of how we might be able to improve our work at the Farm Service Agency offices across the country and in our rural development state offices. And we're in the process of implementing those recommendations. We looked internally in terms of our own operation and required every mission area to put together an equity plan. Over 500 recommendations for action were identified in those equity plans. And for the first time ever, we have a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility officer and staffed with the focus of holding all of us accountable to live up to those plans. We entered into a series of cooperative agreements, understanding and appreciating that many of the constituents that we need to serve may not feel comfortable by virtue of the past having a conversation with folks at USDA, and we wanted to build a bridge of trust. And so we entered into well over 100 contracts with organizations and entities throughout the country that had a trusting relationship with socially disadvantaged farmers, ranchers, and producers, in an effort to make sure that they became aware of the programs, not just at FSA, but also at NRCS. And we're continuing to fund those cooperative agreements. We obviously had a diverse workforce, and they came and suggested that we needed to simplify our process. And so our FSA folks have worked hard to simplify the loan process, to put together a loan assistance tool, to make it a little bit easier for people to access our programs. And we also recognize the challenges that we have had in the past with our county committee structure and system, which is why I exercise the power that I have as secretary to appoint minority members of those counties where there was not adequate minority representation. So we've taken those steps. The President supported and led the effort in Congress to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. And within that act, there was two significant pieces of legislation for the Department of Agriculture. One was to establish a financial assistance program for those who had experienced discrimination at USDA in the past through our farm service programs. That process is now in play. We're encouraging folks who have experienced discrimination in the past to apply for financial assistance. Pretty simple process. If you remember this website, it's 22007-22007, the word apply, A-P-P-L-Y, 22007apply.gov. You get all the information about being able to make an application for the financial assistance that's available under that Inflation Reduction Act provision. The President was also deeply concerned about the fact that there may very well have been a number of borrowers who did business with the USDA who may, because of the pandemic or other circumstances, found themselves in a tough spot. And so he led the effort in the Inflation Reduction Act to establish a distressed borrowers initiative. To date, over 31,000 borrowers who have done business with USDA, either through a direct loan or through a guaranteed loan at a bank that's guaranteed by the USDA, have received over $1.7 billion of assistance to become current on their loans, to provide them, as the President likes to say, the opportunity to breathe a little easier. And we've provided help and assistance, and today we're announcing another $208 million that's going to be available for those who had to essentially utilize our emergency loan program. It's a program that when you're really faced and there's no other recourse, FSA has an emergency loan program. The interest rates of those programs are often higher than our normal program, and so it does make it difficult for folks to make ends meet. So today, for a little over 1,300 borrowers, we're going to provide some level of relief from the Inflation Reduction Act assistance and resources, and we're going to continue to look for ways in which we can loan service folks who find themselves in a circumstance or a difficult situation. If you are doing business with the USDA and if you're in a difficult situation, you need to take advantage of this program, and would encourage you to go on our website at farmers.gov to learn more about the economic assistance that might be available if you're doing business with USDA. So that was the second. That was the second instruction from the President. Focus on equity. Make sure that folks who are trying hard got a little breathing room. The third area was the President was quite interested in making sure that in rural America that we continue to look for ways to grow the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. And there is no better explanation of that circumstance than what we find in American agriculture. And in just a second, I'm going to go over to this whiteboard, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we've done in this space. But to give you some context about this, here's what I need to tell you. In 1981, there was a fellow by the name of Bob Berglund, who was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time. He was leaving office, and he was taking a look at the decision that was made about 10 years before, in the 1970s, to change the way in which the government approached agriculture. During the Depression, we had a supply management system which basically provided some level of assistance in terms of farmers and ranchers, but we transitioned in the 70s to a more market orientation. And farmers across the country were told, plant fence row to fence row, produce as much as you possibly can. And Secretary Berglund was suggesting that after 10 years of experience in that area, he was concerned that that approach, which was focused primarily on production, would lend itself to larger and larger farming operations being developed over time, which meant fewer and fewer farms. And he understood that when you had fewer and fewer farms, that it had an impact not just on those farm families, but also on the small communities that relied on those farm families. If you think about it, if there are fewer farmers, then there are fewer farm families, which means there are fewer children in schools, so schools eventually have to consolidate. When there are fewer kids in school, that means there are fewer customers in the small businesses in these small towns, which means that many of those businesses eventually get boarded up, and you're left with a dollar store or a Walmart. With fewer customers, it results in fewer patients at the hospital, which makes it hard for that hospital to maintain the level of medical care necessary for folks. And so it has an impact on the spirit of the community and on the economic opportunities that are created in the community. The president was aware of this and concerned about it, and Bob Berglund was aware of it. And so when I read about Bob's report in 1981, I thought to myself, I wonder if we actually have experienced the loss of farms, and if so, how extensive would that loss be? Well, it turns out since 1981, we have lost 437,300 farms in the United States. 1 out of every 6 farms gone. Turns out that we've lost 141.1 million acres of land that was at one time in farming that is no longer in farming today. Are we okay with that? We think that's a good direction for the country. Well, if we're not, the question is, what do we do about it? Then Secretary Perdue was the secretary before me, and actually after me, because I'm the only guy that ever came back to this job. He was asked about this in Wisconsin in 2019, and he was quite honest with American agriculture and with rural America. He said, well, essentially in our model, it's get big or get out. And the question is, are we okay with that? A further data point in preparation of my presentation today is to tell you about farm income. Now, I just looked at a report that is being issued today about farm income, and farm income for 2023 is down a little bit from 2022, but that stands to reason because 2022 was the best year in farm income in the history of the United States. And the last 3 years are the best 3 years of farm income for net cash farm income ever. So normally, when a secretary can say something like that, Commissioner, it's a pretty good deal. Here's the problem. Who got the revenue? If you are a farm in which you sell more than $500,000 in sales every year, you're likely a fairly large operation. And in this system, last year, in that record year of farm income, those farms represented 7.5% of all American farms, roughly 150,000 farms. Those 150,000 farms received 89% of the income. Now, we have a little over 2 million farms, which meant that roughly 2 million farms, or 92.5% of American farms, had to split 11%, which explains why nearly 50% of our farms didn't make any money, and roughly 40% made money, but the majority of money they made to represent and take care of their families came from off-farm income. So are we okay with that? If we're not, then we have to have an alternative. And the President directed me and his Department of Agriculture to begin the process of putting an alternative together. And by virtue of his leadership, he provided the resources through the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and our utilization of the Commodity Credit Corporation to essentially establish a new framework for small and mid-sized operations. An alternative, if you will, to the notion of getting big and getting out. A response that acknowledges the importance of production agriculture and the need for it, but offers a different way of doing business for small and mid-sized folks. So here's what we have now that we didn't have a couple of years ago, which is a framework. And it takes me over here to begin this process. This is a university campus. I'm supposed to teach. So if we put at the middle a farm family in South Carolina or any other state, or for that matter, you all grow a lot of forestry products down here, a family that's in the forest business. How do you change the get big or get out model? How do you create an option? Well, it's all about income at the end of the day. Today, farmers can basically sell an organic crop or livestock, or they can sell a commodity. With the commodity, it's relatively low profit, so you have to sell a lot of it, which is why the notion of getting bigger makes sense. So in order to provide a different option, you've got to create multiple avenues for that same small and mid-sized farming operation to make a living. Additional revenue streams that are coming in simultaneously, if you will, with the sale of whatever is being grown or raised on that farm. So we began with the President's focus on the notion of climate change. And his instruction to me was, make agriculture climate smart. There are 175 different practices that farmers today across America are utilizing that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and can, in fact, also sequester carbon. South Carolina State University is the only university, I'm told, that actually is engaged and involved in our initiative in this, in terms of having at least 2 projects that they're focused on. We put $3 billion in a pot. We have 141 projects today in America across all 50 states, every single commodity, 175 practices. And what we're doing is essentially we're helping to pay farmers to encourage them to embrace climate-smart practices. Now, that doesn't address the income issue, but it makes it easier for farmers to embrace climate-smart practices because it de-risks it. It eliminates the financial burden, especially for the 92.5% that continue to struggle. But this is different because in addition to helping farmers embrace those practices, it also creates a revenue stream that didn't exist before. We've worked with retailers, with food processing companies, to essentially create and establish markets that will pay a premium for the climate-smart commodity. So now, instead of just organic and regular commodity, you've got something in the middle that is a value-added proposition. So this is the first way, a value-added way, of potentially increasing income. We're going to monitor and measure and verify the results of all of this. We're going to figure out what works and what doesn't work. But there's a significant effort behind this monitoring and measuring. In addition to figuring out what works, it will also qualify farmers to be able to participate fully and completely in what are called ecosystem service markets. Now, what is an ecosystem service market? It's essentially paying farmers for the environmental benefit that they, and in many cases only they, can generate. You can sequester carbon in only a few ways. One way is to sequester it in soil. Farmers have access to soil. Many farming operations can actually operate at a negative climate impact. And so that difference between that negative number and 0 is available, if you will, to essentially provide as an offset to an industry, a utility, a construction firm, a major industry that can't get to 0. They're willing to pay the farmer income for that benefit. We've never had really that opportunity before. Now we will. Now, in addition to the opportunity to take advantage of the ecosystem service markets, many of these projects also involve the conversion of agricultural waste into what we refer to as a bioproduct. Let me give you an example. Sustainable aviation fuel. I think you all get electric cars. If the battery wears out, you pull to the side of the road, you make a cell phone call to a friend, you get a charge, and off you go. How confident are you in flying in a plane where the battery wears out? Especially if you're flying over water. Well, the reality is you're not going to have battery-powered planes for long-distance flight. You're going to need a low-carbon fuel. That low-carbon fuel, in a sense, doesn't exist today, except in a small handful of experimental projects. Well, this is a 36 billion gallon industry that doesn't yet exist. The current biofuel industry on ethanol is 15 billion. It employs 400,000 folks. It stabilizes prices for many farmers. Do the math. You're talking about more jobs. You're talking about stabilizing farm income from a variety of sources, from woody biomass to crop residue to a variety of other factors. So a number of climate-smart practices and programs that we're currently funding are engaged and involved in the development of that sustainable aviation fuel. A company by the name of Gevo out of Minnesota is working on that. So this is a new set of commodities that creates new income opportunities for the conversion of waste. Think about the over-application of manure that sometimes happens across American agriculture. Now that manure can be converted into a multitude of bioproducts that we will see encouraged because of this focus on climate smart. The President's leadership led to the development in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, of the Renewable Energy for America program. Now that's a program that pays farmers to embrace solar, wind, biodigesters to reduce their costs of providing the electricity and the power they need to operate their farms. But many farmers, in fact most farmers, are able to produce actually excess power, more than they need for their own purposes. In the IRA, there's two programs, one called PACE and the other one called New Era, in which we're essentially providing billions of dollars to the RECs and local small rural municipal utilities, encouraging them to convert from their current fossil fuel-based energy production to more renewable, a more balanced portfolio. There's now the opportunity with the money that we're providing farmers to create their own energy for those farmers to band together to create pools of excess energy, which can then be sold to the RECs and the municipal utilities in a power purchase agreement. This creates a whole new commodity and a whole new revenue source for small and mid-sized producers. We've heard from producers about the importance of processing, and so the President instructed us to invest in processing. We will, by the end of the day, invest over $1 billion in additional processing capacity. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in South Carolina, we have 2 projects that we've invested in. I'll just check my notes here. There are 2 projects in which we are focusing roughly, just in the state of South Carolina, roughly $50 million of additional processing capacity. By the way, I mentioned that South Carolina State University is engaged in 2 projects, the only university that has more than 1 project involved. There are actually over nearly 100 universities involved in this particular initiative. And between the 2 projects, there's about $75 million potentially available. So this processing creates a more competitive market for farmers and a better price for farms. It is part of our effort at local and regional farm systems. And why do I talk about that? When you go to the grocery store and you buy something from the grocery store, ask yourself how much of that dollar that I just spent do farmers get? Well, it turns out that farmers get about 15 cents of every food dollar. So that means somebody else gets 85 cents. If you are essentially involved in a local and regional food system, you don't have as many people in the middle between the farmer and the customer. And so if you eliminate those people in the middle, there's more opportunity for farmers. As it turns out, I was in Pittsburgh not long ago talking about this, and I asked folks who were engaged in a local and regional food system, what percentage of the food dollar does the farmer get in their system? They told me 50 cents of every food dollar. In Minnesota, someone told me it was 75 cents. So the chances are pretty significant here for us to build out the local and regional food system, farm to school, farm to restaurant, farm to table, farm to any institutional purchaser of food, farm to university, essentially enabling folks to eliminate the middleman, create better opportunity for the customer, fresher, more nutritious offerings, and also keep the money and the resources circulating in the local economy. Just to give you a sense of this, we've invested in South Carolina a little over $6.5 million in what we call the LAMP program, which is like the value-added producer grant program. We recently did 18 projects here in South Carolina. we provided local schools and local food banks resources to purchase from local and regional producers roughly $14 million, a little over $1 million in the Farm to School program. Now I'm going to throw the commissioner under the bus here for just a second. Apologize for this, but part of my job. We gave the commissioner resources under what we refer to as the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Program, RFSI. We gave him almost $5 million. And we basically said, look, Commissioner, you understand your state better than we do. How would you invest and how would your state invest those resources in furthering this local and regional food system? Is it more processing for non-meat and poultry, which is all of that is meat and poultry? Is it cold storage? Is it warehousing? What is it that we can help you build out a stronger local and regional food system? And so that's resources that have been created that also create new opportunities that didn't exist before. Then there's the issue of federal procurement. We buy a lot of food. We buy food for schools, we buy food for food banks. We recently provided about $14 million to the commissioner. He's the guy with the money. Remember, as I leave here, he's going to still be around. But he, again, will be working to use those resources in a way to figure out ways in which to support this local and regional food system and basically create the muscle memory that as we purchase more food for food banks, for distressed families, and for schools, that we continue to look for ways in which we can keep those resources in South Carolina, keep those resources in the local area, support jobs, support local farmers. We haven't done this before to the level and extent that we're doing it now. And we're also aware of the fact that folks are concerned about input costs. That report that I mentioned earlier about income does indicate that the input costs have come down or have not gone up as much as they did last year, but nevertheless, fertilizer is an issue. We want to be more independent of where our fertilizer comes from. None of us are happy that we have to rely on countries like Russia or Belarus for our fertilizer. We want to be more resilient. And so the President has instructed us to invest up to $900 million in roughly 92 projects, one of which is in, I think, South Carolina, to create new fertilizer or to create synthetic fertilizer or to figure out ways in which we can use less fertilizer so that farmers at the end of the day end up using less and spending less. So instead of just relying on the sale of a commodity or livestock under the old model, you now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways for that farm family simultaneously to generate income that they didn't have before, increased income, and one way where they can reduce their costs. Now all of a sudden you've got a framework. Now the good news is that this administration is committed to this framework, so over time, over the next 3 to 5 years, by virtue of the investments in the infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, and the CCC, we're going to continue to invest nearly $20 billion in that effort. Why is this all important? And I'll finish with this. I mentioned the significance to American agriculture and income and the income disparity. We want to make sure that folks have a better chance of staying on the farm if they're small, if they're mid-sized, or if they're large. We want greater resilience in our food system. We learned during the pandemic that as efficient as our system was, sometimes efficiency can get disrupted in a very significant and serious way. So this creates a more resilient food system. This creates more opportunity for farmers and also more job opportunities in rural places. And I think it's beginning to work. For the first time in a number of years, we saw out-migration from rural to urban and suburban America stop. And we actually had net migration into rural America last year for the first time in a while. We saw a reduction in persistently poor counties in the country. A number of counties that historically have had poverty rates in excess of 20% saw a significant reduction in those rates. So it's beginning to work in that sense. But here's why it's also important to the country. It's not just the value system that's at play here. It's not just about small and mid-sized producers, or for that matter, economic opportunity in small towns. It's the ability of moms and dads and grandparents to be able to say to their children and grandchildren, you don't have to leave. You can stay, you can come back, you can have economic opportunity, you can change the world, you can make a fundamental difference, you can restructure the economy of the country, and it probably also means that the number of people that we draw from rural America for our military will continue to be available. Because our military disproportionately comes from rural places. In other words, it's 13% of America's population on any given day. There are 2 to maybe as much as 3 times that number in the military coming from those small towns. So if you continue to shrink opportunity, you're going to continue to shrink the pool of those folks who are brave enough and willing enough to serve us in a military capacity. So the question I think that we have to ask ourselves is, are we okay with get big or get out? Are we okay with losing prime farmland? Are we okay with the concentration of farm income? And if we're not, are we okay with trying something that gives us and gives families an opportunity to say, we can make it? So that's what this is about. That's why it's important. That's why it's important for South Carolina State University to be engaged and involved. That's why it's important for us to have a farm bill that continues to support programs like this. Why it's important for us to have a budget that allows us to staff the programs that are important to this program. Why it's important not to disrupt the funding and resources from the Inflation Reduction Act that will help further this program. And why it's important, I think, for America generally and fully and completely, whether they live in rural America or not, to be concerned about this and to make sure that we offer true opportunity. Because this is what it looks like when you talk about bottom up and middle out. So that's what we've been up to. I'm looking forward now to moving the whiteboard away, and we've obviously got a very large panel that we're going to hear from, which I think will be extremely interesting. And with that, I'll invite Dr. Goldmon and others to come on up.
Commissioner, how are you?
Is this on? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is kind of daunting. This is a powerful panel. I'm Dewayne Goldmon. I'm a senior advisor for racial justice and equity, reporting to the Secretary. And I'm glad to be in South Carolina, at South Carolina State University, one of 1890 land-grant universities doing a heck of a job down here. I look out in the audience, I see a lot of familiar people. And I was sitting there listening as Secretary Vilsack was talking. And just quick summary, he was talking about the Biden-Harris administration, how it's come down to him to lead the Department of Agriculture in a situation where agriculture rebuilds itself from the bottom up and the middle out. And we've been hard at it, going on 3 years now. But now we get to hear from the experts. Now we get to hear from those people that we are obligated to serve. And when you work for the Department of Agriculture, with all of its potential and all of its history, it can be a daunting task. But you didn't come here to hear from me because while I am a farmer, I'm not one of the experts. You've already heard from the Secretary, Mayor Benjamin. I just want you to look at this panel and look at the diversity of talent in this panel. I know we're all sensitive about race and color and stuff. I'll just talk about hair maybe. We have different hues of hair on here. I'm pretty gray myself. We even have some with a little more gray than I do. We have some with no hair. We have people with straight hair. This is American agriculture, people. We are diversity, and diversity is one of our strengths. I say that with all seriousness. You'll hear from a couple of leaders. Dr. Ralph Noble, I've known for years as the new dean here at South Carolina State University. He has with him Dr. Drama, who you'll hear from. You'll hear from community-based organizations that are working on things that are important to this community, like Harris Property. And more importantly, you'll hear from 10 farmers and ranchers that are growing all kinds of crops and animals, and they're doing a great job. And all of these distinguished panelists have been tasked with telling us how the Department of Agriculture has helped their operation, but also tell us the things that we can do to improve the way our programs are designed, delivered, and are implemented on your operations. Tell us about the challenges that you've faced in operating and building your farms and ranches, and how we at USDA can help to address some of those challenges that you faced. And this is the important part, my fellow panelists. We've asked you to do that in 3 minutes. And I have been assigned the task of keeping us on schedule. So don't take it personally, but I'm going to do that because we want you to share that with us, but we also seriously want to provide an opportunity to interact with you some. I know the gentleman to my left, Secretary Vilsack, will probably have some questions, and I don't have the authority to keep him from asking those questions. So we need to allow that. I'm sure the mayor may have some as well as the commissioner. But with that, let's dig right in. Let me start. I know where I am, Commissioner. So I'm not going to come to your state and your Department of Agriculture and not acknowledge you and give you at least a moment or two to address this crowd however you see fit, sir.
Thank you, and good afternoon. It is a privilege to be here and see a lot of good friends. You know, following on what Secretary Vilsack said, the fact that we grow things in most states, and especially South Carolina, it is the largest contributor to our economy. So agriculture, our farmers, our 24,700 farmers are the base of it all. This business of producing food and fiber and fuel for consumption creates another 250,000 jobs directly and indirectly in our state alone. I say that so we take pride in our industry. But as we're here to talk about, you know, we have our blemishes as well. In the Department of Agriculture, I'll just tell you, go to agriculture.sc.gov and you'll find out what your Department of Agriculture in South Carolina is doing. We do quite a number of things in partnership with USDA. The Secretary mentioned RFSI. That will roll out soon, and it will be a great opportunity for processing and value adding. We do other state-funded grants, infrastructure. wherein we find opportunities to process our food and deliver it to our markets, be it schools, hospitals, universities, you name it. So we think South Carolina's probably got one of the most aggressive approaches to building our industry, gaining more value here, making us a little more food independent than most. So got a long list of things we do. I couldn't tell you that in 3 minutes, but I can tell you a website. So come and take a look at that, agriculture.sc.gov. Call us, let us know, because we do have quite a number of programs wherein we focus on the African American community. We work with the Black Farmers Coalition. We have a program that we're going to do gap training, and we've identified, I think, a dozen socially disadvantaged farmers to start with, to let the farmers see that gap is not an insurmountable thing to do. Because I use as an example, there are thousands of little hurdles along the way to open up markets for the farmers we're trying to serve, large, small, and in between, new, beginning. The LFPA, I think the Secretary called it the local regional food system. The LFPA has brought quite a number of farmers into the food supply who were not a part of it earlier. In the third quarter that we just completed, we added 101 African American farmers to the food supply system, working with food banks, serving families in need. We took that one step farther to say, here's why you should look at taking and prioritizing healthier food and not the most convenient place to stop. We have a program called Change SC. We all know in our state we've got some health statistics that we don't like, and we think food is one of the keys to changing that. So I probably ran past 3 minutes about 4 minutes ago, so I will stop and just thank you for letting me participate.
Thank you, Commissioner Weathers. We have two people from the White House. You've heard a compelling argument from Secretary Vilsack. I want to give Mayor Benjamin another chance before we get into the farmer panelists. Mr. Mayor.
My grandmama would tell me that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. We're here to listen. The Secretary's done a great job, as well as the Commissioner, in sharing so many opportunities here. And our job here is to listen, to figure out how things are landing, what we need to improve and work upon to make sure that this vision of the President's becomes real for each and every one of your families as well. I will say this, of course, I'm a retired mayor, former president of the Conference of Mayors, former president of the African American Mayors Association. I'm the forever president of the Mayors Mutual Admiration Society. So I got to give a shout out to Mayor Michael Butler, my friend, and Sidney Evering, his city manager, who most of his bad habits Sidney picked up from me practicing law with me over the years. And I would be remiss being here on this campus without saying how much an incredible visionary, transformational, and I believe one of the most consequential public servants of the last century and a half that Jim Clyburn has been in making all this real. I see John Rickenbacker from his team here. I want to make sure I acknowledge that although he might not be here physically, he is here in spirit with us, Jim Clyburn.
Thank you all. Again, the experts. We're going to start with Dr. Noble. We've been on your campus, the dean of this fine institution. Dr. Noble, dean in the College of Ag and Consumer Sciences here at South Carolina State University, sir.
Thank you, and welcome everyone here. As the dean of the College of Agriculture, Family, and Consumer Sciences, we've received a very significant project associated with what they call Next Gen. It's an effort to get more of our youth. We know the average farmer age is growing. They're not coming back to the farm as frequently. And some of the activities on our farm is actually being deplenished. So we're trying to reach back and find a way to educate the kids about today's agriculture. It's technology driven. It has things with robots in it, drones, and Lord knows they want to use their phone. So we want to incorporate that into our scheduled programs, into our curriculum, and in some cases, not wait till they get to be juniors and seniors in high school. It's too late. So we're going to be reaching back to middle schools, high schools, going into the rural communities, not just the urban areas, to let the kids know about the programs that sometimes their parents have worked in. They can get jobs there too. But it won't be the same way. It's not as much back-breaking skills as it is going to be technology-driven and market opportunities. So this Next Gen proposal, we got about $8.7 million. We're working with Alabama A&M in Alabama, are partnerships with organizations, communities, and in some cases, your schools. But we want kids to be ready to grow up and they think about engineering, they think about medicine, they also think about agriculture. It's the #1 industry in the state. There's a lot of jobs there. And all the jobs, it's a diversity of fields. We want to educate our youth going forward and what that means. And that's where we're headed going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Noble. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Drama, Assistant Vice President here at South Carolina State University, but has been leading South Carolina State universities in a major way as they work to develop climate-smart options for their growers. So, Dr. Drama.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goldman. The commissioner mentioned, the secretary mentioned $75 million being awarded to South Carolina. That number is exactly what it is. It's actually $74.5 million. $70 million for phase 1, that is pool 1, where Clemson is the lead and we are the lead partner with them. And I have our colleague from Clemson here. We are implementing one project. The second project is the 4.5 to $626 million, which is the small grant, and that one is targeting cash crop as cover crop. They are all geared towards, enhancing the innovation of climate smart best practices that will allow the farmers to be able to innovate their practices, mitigating carbon emissions while sequestering carbon under the ground through conservation practices that US NRCS have put in place: cover cropping, reduce to no-till, and mulching. At the first year, we are very excited. We did our recruitment phase of this program. We have about 228 farmers between South Carolina State University and Clemson on the first grant. So the recruiting phase is done. Some implementation processes are already in place. The cover cropping practices, the reduce to no-till practices, or the mulching. And then we are encouraging the carbon practices of it, where they can do stacking, where they can do both cover cropping, or they can do mulching at the same time, or can do reduced till, and they can do cover cropping at the same time. Every farmer who is enrolled will collect a baseline sample size of soil test on that farm to understand the impact moving forward. What we tell them at different levels is we want to do two things. We want to reduce emission. That means we want to keep the carbon under the ground, and we want to help them increase their yield and productivity so that they can have more buck for their money. The incentive payment of it is going to be on acreage basis. We limit them. We were supposed to recruit 75 farmers for year 1. We end up at 82 because the interest is high. So instead of 10 acres, we reduce to 8 acres so we can involve a lot more people. This is a coordination between Clemson and South Carolina State on the big grant. The small grant, we just completed our negotiation phase. It took like 4 or 5 months. We just done it. Now we just did our program lead meeting last week, I think 2 weeks ago, in the Potomac. Now we are in the recruiting phase for the smaller grant. We begin to implement those programs in January. We have our partners, really, agreement documents being developed now. So the big grant, that started July. We have 228 farmers. South Carolina State have 82 of those farmers. The practices for the commodities that we are using is leafy greens, that is vegetable, kale, turnip, or radish. And then for the other commodities is beef cattle or forage. Forest is exclusive for Clemson, and the fourth one is leafy greens. So it is going. We are continuing to recruit, and for our model is every year we increase the number of farmers. We limit the number of acreage to 8, but we can increase more because we want scalability of the practice to have better impact on the carbon sequestration and the control of the emissions into the sky by them doing the practices that they must do so that we can all win. So they have to perform their responsibilities, we perform our responsibilities, and then the incentive payment is after all the verification of those practices are done. And those incentive payments are discussed and negotiated. So a farmer who is farming 4 acres and they have cover crop, they can make up to $1,500 per acre doing the cover crop.
Great.
And if they combine that with reduced till or mulching, that is another $1,500. So
Great.
This is the process out.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dr. Drama. Now, I'm gonna get a little nastier as we go, so y'all just bear with me, okay? We're shifting here. There's a method to this. You heard from the university. You're gonna hear from Dr. Jenny Stevens next, Center for Air Property Preservation here in South Carolina. There's a lot of great work. I have the pleasure of watching her work on the Equity Commission, which also plays a role as we march towards equity. So, Dr. Stevens, if you will.
So I have typed out my notes because Dr. Goldman has threatened me. So good afternoon. I am Dr. Jenny Stevens, and I'm the CEO of the Center for Air Property Preservation, as well as a member of the Agriculture Subcommittee of the USDA Equity Mission. First, I want to say thank you to the divisions of USDA for their many years of financial support that they have provided to the Center for Air Property Preservation. My work at the center involves providing the tools of legal and forestry education and technical assistance to historically underserved persons who own undivided interest in their family land, known as heirs property. This form of land ownership prevents these landowners from obtaining mortgages and limits their access to USDA cost share programs and loans. For example, forestry is a $23 billion industry in the state of South Carolina. Most of the center's tree farmers do not have the resources to benefit from this industry because they do not have clear marketable title to their land. They may be able to obtain farm tract numbers from FSA and contracts from NRCS to have forest management or conservation plans drafted, but that is as far as they can go. Most recently, FSA created the Access to Land, Capital, and Markets program funded through the Inflation Reduction Act, which is time limited. I urge USDA to create programs similar to that of FSA in the Forest Service, Natural Resource Conservation Services, and rural development. Legislation to fund these efforts can be proposed and adopted in the upcoming Farm Bill. In my closing, I would remind you that heirs property is an issue all across the United States. Whether you are an African American in the Black Belt, Caucasian in the Appalachia, Latina in the Colonias of Texas, or Native American on a reservation. Resolving the issue of heirs property would allow these historically underserved individuals to see their land as an asset rather than a liability, as it becomes productive and helps them to keep their farms as farms and enables them to participate and benefit from new and expanding markets. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Stevens, just a couple of questions on this. First of all, thanks for your service on the Equity Commission, and thanks for your continued advocacy on this issue of heirs property. Talk to me for just a second on how do we actually solve this problem. So if you've got a family, they've got divided interests, how do we go about solving it? What's the process? What do you need? What are the tools that are required?
Well, the first thing we try to do is prevent it. So that education is really important. I won't ask everybody how many of you in this room have a will, because that's important. That is how heirs property is created. So how to fix it? Primarily, you're going to need a lawyer. We can change policy, but there is a need for legal services. So the center, I can tell you how we fix it. The Center for Heirs Property Preservation has lawyers on its team. So, and The center pays them, so they are loyal to the nonprofit, which helps people to trust them. We provide what we call a family presentation, which is an educational seminar with mediation thrown in, because 9 times out of 10, if you have an issue with the land, it has nothing to do with the land. It's about a family dynamic that was never addressed. So we deal with that, and then once we have that out of the way, our lawyers, it could be helping them draft create their family tree. It could be helping them find heirs, because that's important. So,
do you go about essentially consolidating the land ownership?
It depends upon the family.
Okay.
Some of them want to consolidate, and some of them basically say, I want what belongs to me, and so we have to do what the family requests of us.
Well, we did set up a relending program to try to provide some level of potential credit for those who want to consolidate. And I would also point out that we just recently announced a socially disadvantaged farmer forestry initiative to try to provide assistance and help and resources for folks to maximize their forestry opportunities. So
Okay.
We're taking a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's been interesting watching this whole arena of heirs property work. The one common thing, and I've heard you say it, Dr. Stevens, before, is when you convert the land to where it becomes an asset and not a liability, when you make that land start to generate a profit, people tend to take interest, and they're more motivated to actually go ahead and clear up the heirs property issue so that they can continue. I think that's an important part of this bottom-up, middle-out approach that we've been talking about. So thanks a lot. We're finna get down to some real experts now. These people have taken time away from their farm or ranch to be here with us. And what we've asked them to do is tell us a little bit about your farming operation, how USDA has been helpful, how we can continue to provide better services to you. And we'll start off with J.C. Chandler. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is J.C. Chandler. I'm 18 years old. I'm a 9th generation beef cattle farmer, and I attend the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture. About 2 years ago, I went to the USDA, and I got a youth loan. This youth loan helped me to purchase my first cattle. I had always worked on my family farm with my parents, but I wanted my own because I'm very independent and I like to do it myself. So I wanted my own, and so this loan helped me purchase my first commercial cattle. And I used this commercial cattle, the money I raised from it, and I started Charolais. I wanted purebred Charolais because this helped me. My family, my great-great-grandfather, him and his brothers were the first ones to have Charolais in South Carolina. So I wanted to go back to my family roots of Charolais. And this helped me, this loan helped me start that. And so now I'm up to about 17 head of Charolais cattle of purebred, and these I used to show. So this loan has helped me grow from just working on my parents to having my own and having production cattle as well as show cattle. I've been able to travel to multiple different states to different shows. I actually just got back from Louisville. I was at the North American International Livestock Expo at that show. This is just great opportunities available to me. And also, through this, I've also been able to grow with my school. My school is the Governor's School for Agriculture. It's a residential high school focused on agriculture. And these opportunities that it's given me is like to be up here today. I've been able to meet multiple different people and to grow. And part of it is because of this loan I've had, which also I had an article. They want to promote this loan because it's a great opportunity for youth and to get started, if they're interested in agriculture, it's a way to get started in agriculture. It's a way to learn money management and life skills that you'll need in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Frazier, John Frazier.
Good afternoon. My name is John Frazier. I'm from Barefoot Farms in St. Helena, South Carolina. We grow a variety of fruits and vegetables. Our main crop is blackberries, strawberries, and watermelons, but we grow all the other intermediate crops in between that, all type of vegetables. The LFPD program has been very beneficial to us this year because it helped us move products at a decent price instead of taking bargain low prices and giving it all to the food bank for nothing. And we've in the farm stewardship, the LFP program for this year, but we also participate in the Climate Smart program. The Climate Smart program, we into that, and we're going to see how that's work out. You know, we're putting it in now. If we get the check in, it would be very beneficial to us. If we don't get the check, it won't be beneficial, but it requires a lot to work into these programs because you get no incentive up front to do these practices. So you have to come out of your pocket to do these climate smart programs. It's not a freebie, like most people say it is. It's not a freebie as I see it. And also our biggest problem in farming has been deer. We've been farming all my life. And this past year we grew crops, and we lost 75% of our crops to deer this past year. We grew approximately 5 acres of strawberries, and we didn't get a one to eat. We had fencing up, electric fencing, and we asked the commissioner at a meeting one day, what can we do about it? He said, there's nothing you can do about deer because there's no programs to cover deer damage, not even insurance or anything. So I'm asking Secretary Vilsack, what are you going to do about the deer problem for small Because as being a small farmer, you got small fields. And when these deers come into these small fields, they are annihilated overnight. You have 25, 30 deers in the field overnight, and the next morning you got nothing. There's nothing to recover. We need money for fencing. USDA provides no money for fencing for deer. The NAP program doesn't cover deer damage. And that's because I thought about quit farming this year, coming up, don't farm no more, and I farmed all my life because of the deer problem. So we started putting together, scraping together a few dollars, and we started putting fences around all the fields that we're growing in. And if I can't put a fence around it, I won't grow. So I may be growing 10 or 15 acres, I may be growing just the one that I got the fence around now. But that's a critical need, and that's one of the most pressing issues the farmers in my area have. You know, we got programs for everything except the vital one that we need.
Mr. Frazier, you asked a question. I saw the secretary pull the mic close. And you have ample witnesses here. I'm just moderating.
A couple things. I think, you know, I'd ask the folks at NRCS who are here today to work with you to see whether or not there's some way of utilizing EQIP, CSB, you know, some way of addressing the issue. I think there is a way to get you some resources for fencing. Also, there's also a way for you to get some resources for climate smart agriculture. NRCS has a number of programs that will assist you in addition to the climate smart initiative through the traditional NRCS programs. So between, I think you definitely want to talk to the NRCS folks. Just stand up so he knows who you are.
Where's Miss English?
Yeah, Miss English. There she is, right there. You talk.
Yeah, because I asked them. I've asked them several meetings. I've been asked.
Well, no, she's good. She'll talk to you.
They said, you know, there's no help for that. There's no help for that. That's on you.
I think we can find a way.
That's
can't
what
we?
I've been told.
In all seriousness, a lot of the problems of American agriculture have been solved by conversations that started like this.
No, that's right.
And the greatest example I can think of is the Dust Bowl. Because before we had the Dust Bowl in the 30s, and when the red dirt showed up on the steps of the USDA's building there in Washington, D.C., on the steps of the White House, I understand that created the Soil Conservation Service, which is now the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
In fairness, Dwayne, the NRCS has been working hard to try to solve problems for as long as it's been in existence.
Exactly.
And I would say also that while we may not have a crop insurance program that addresses that specific nature of loss, we've seen an expansion of the crop insurance program. There are now over 600 policies that are available, especially for specialty crop producers. And we're looking at ways in which we can continue to provide additional opportunities for risk management. So we're sensitive to the challenges of small producers that can be devastated by a variety of factors.
Thank you, sir. Very
Dr.
good.
Goldmon, if I could make a comment, John Frazier, I know him as
go
Jackie,
ahead.
and I think Mr. Dixon both part of the LFPA program. Mr. Secretary, if other states are as successful as we are in South Carolina, perhaps if that could be extended. Our allocation is 14+ million. At the rate we went the first year, which we're just completing, we would annualize, we would total out about 33 million. So we're going to have to curtail the program to make it last the 3 years. It's been that successful. And again, bringing African American farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers into that supply chain that they weren't earlier has been a big part of that success.
Thank you. Agriculture, as we know it, is making some changes, and I hope you see this from the diversity of the panelists up here. We're going to talk to Mr. Eric McClam, an urban farmer.
Afternoon. My name is Eric McClam. I started City Roots Organic Farm in Columbia, South Carolina with my dad in 2009. We were the first urban farm in South Carolina, compliments of Mayor Benjamin. We have since expanded from just our urban farm to include a rural farm in Richland County with the assistance of the South Carolina Department of Agriculture and South Carolina Commerce. That new facility is a $5 million facility on which we are utilizing a lot of climate smart projects, some of which are funded through the USDA through the REAP program. We are putting in 300 kW of solar panels, which will offset our entire energy consumption for the facility. We've designed a geothermal heating and cooling system, so we've negated all fossil fuel usage for heating and cooling throughout the farm. We've also utilized the Value-Added Producer Grant program, and now we are marketing not just in South Carolina, but from New York to Florida. We are certified organic through Clemson University. We have also used resources from the Farm Services Agency for some of our loans, and NRCS conservation programs for our land management and conservation practices. Essentially, we have looked to the USDA to help us expand and grow our farm and our farm facility, and would not have gotten to be able to grow as quickly and as well as we have without the help of the Department of Agriculture, Clemson, all of these different entities, and many of which require a matching grant component, meaning we have to come up with the capital to do so, or they have in-kind matching. These things can be difficult for family farms like ours to do so. Hopefully those matches can be reduced or the in-kind can be increased. Just the REAP program itself used to be 25%. It's now 50%, if I'm not mistaken, which has allowed us to put in enough solar panels to power our whole farm, so we're not dependent on outside fossil fuels. So those are many of the things that we've done. We're moving our farm, a portion of it, and then hiring an additional 50 people in a rural setting. So we're actually going from urban to rural, because that's where we would like to expand and promote jobs. And we really want to thank everybody.
Thank you so much, sir. Ms. Yvonne Knight Carter. The mic is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm, as he said, Yvonne Knight Carter, out of Moncks Corner, South Carolina, Berkeley County. And let me say that we are Broadex branch partners, my sister and myself, and we are products of the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. And I say that because that is how we came into the forestry business. We took advantage of all of their education programs that we could, and I think we learned a few things. And as we moved forward in becoming certified tree farmers, of course, we worked with, or they worked with us rather, NRCS. We were able to do a cost share program, EQIP. We did the CSP where we left 5 acres for wildlife habitat, and we also planted 85 acres of loblolly pine trees. We also recently planted around 16 acres of loblolly trees for the purpose of carbon sequestration, as the Secretary was talking about the carbon sequestration. We started small. I haven't wrapped my head completely around that, so little at a time. I'm wearing a couple of hats, and I only have 2 minutes. A couple of mills have closed in South Carolina. So for farmers, tree farmers, it will become difficult to move our product. And as I work on the South Carolina Forestry Association board, they have created I think they call it recovery task force, to try to come up with ways to increase marketing for us. But the bottom line is the mills aren't here anymore. So we have to find new ways of moving our product, which are trees. I'm also part of the Delahau Board of Trustees, and I was saying that I didn't need to say anything about them because the president of the student body is here, and you can see the quality of student that he is, and there are many, 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 many more on the campus. It's a residential setting, and they're doing great work there. If you get an opportunity to please visit, and Mr. Secretary, they could always use some additional assistance. My goal, I guess, as a woodland advocate is the example that we set and what we do on our farm for others to know that they can also do it and make it a viable working farm. We also lease for hunting, we also lease for agriculture, so we are trying to tap into as many different ways of income that we can. And CSP is an income producing, I guess, project. I think that's about it.
Thank you, Ms. Knight Carter.
Let me just, a couple of points here. There will be coming out shortly, if not, it may already be out, I may be mistaken by the timing, but there is an effort on the part of the USDA to provide some level of assistance for mills to try to keep them open or potentially reopen. So be on the lookout for that. And also, we have a wood innovation initiative through the U.S. Forest Service, which may create additional ways of using wood that might create other opportunities. Something to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You'll notice a theme here, a triangle that was just revealed up here, where a student, heirs property, coming out to actually benefit the forest owner in this case. I think that's a step in the right direction. We're going to skip a few people and go down to Mr. Dixon, Warren Dixon, to hear about his operation.
Good evening. I'm a fourth generation farmer, and my son is the fifth, and my grandson is the sixth generation, and we still stay on that farm. My grandfather bought that farm in the middle of 1800s, right after 1865. And I served on the Ori Soil and Water Conservation District. I served on the FHA State Committee and Farm Bureau Board. And we've worked, I started farming about 40 years ago, and that's when I first got familiar with the FSA and the NRCS. Back then it was called Soil Conservation and FSA. But they have helped me wonderful. Different programs they did. We did risk management with the NAP programs, the disaster assistance, NRCS. We have a farm that did a lot of we have a bad erosion problem in roads, and installed navigators on our tractors, auto steering. And my grandsons have accumulated loans from FHA, and I have also had a loan from FHA, and I graduated from FHA in 1980, I think. I started borrowing money in 1971, and they call you something, graduation. But we works with the LFPA, and that's been a benefit to our farm because it caused us to move a lot of our product that we used to have to haul out of state. And we went through not me personal, but when you messing with a lot of sweet potatoes, a lot of these companies go bankrupt. And when you go through 3 or 4 bankrupts, it's kind of rough. But LACP, they pay you money in 30 days, and they take your crop and they pay you a premium price on it. And I'd rather, as a farmer, I'd rather get a premium price for what I grow than to draw a supplement, because it'll make a farmer feel good to know he getting something that he did. But because you can make a 100% crop and go to the market and sell it, and the price, say corn is $3 or $4 a bushel, you ain't made nothing. And then if you make over your production, you're not even qualified for crop insurance. And that's what hurt a lot of we come in the same situation this year with all the rain down in Overy County, everybody know where Myrtle Beach at. And it put us in a stage we couldn't draw no federal crop, but we made a disaster crop. And so only thing you can do there is pay a $75,000 premium. And a $75,000 premium is a pretty good premium to me. Any other question?
I like that. You like, look,
I'm a little nervous, but
You're fine, Mr. Dixon. You're fine, Mr. Dixon.
I'm not used to this. I'm an old farm boy.
That's all right. That's all right.
I might have a clean head, but I've been out here a good while.
That's all right, Mr. Dixon. Thank you for your comments. Let's hear from Mr. McLean.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim McLean. I'm a first-generation rancher, but I started as the son of sharecropper, born in a sharecropper shack over in the PD, where we sharecropped tobacco, cotton, etc. But I always wanted to be a cowboy. And so, on my way to claiming the title rancher, I spent the part of 4 decades as a United States Marine, traveling the world representing our nation. After I retired from the Marine Corps, I spent another 20 years as a senior corporate exec, representing corporations around the world. We grow premium hay, coastal Bermuda hay on my ranch, selling it to the equine market. We also grow premium grass-fed beef on my ranch, selling it to whomever. We have benefited mightily from our relationship with USDA, particularly with the folks at NRCS. We have cost-shared fencing projects. We have cross-shared irrigation projects. We lost our dam about 5 years ago, and the dam was really critical to our operation, both as a source of irrigation water, but also a source of habitat for various birds and other animals. We also have participated in an easement project whereby some 300 acres of our land is in perpetuity as it is today. It can never be anything more than that. So thanks to Dan English and others, Jody Carter and his team, we have established a very, very robust operation at the Flying Leatherneck Ranch, and I'm very happy to be a part of this.
Thank you, Mr. McLean, and thanks for your service. It's tremendous sacrifice. But this thing, you'll notice whether he's talking about an 18-year-old who's just getting into it or someone as great as I am. This thing about agriculture is serious, people. I'm glad to hear your comments. Let's hear from Ms. Glass.
Good afternoon. My name's Jody Glass. I'm from Lawrence, South Carolina. I have a small beef cattle operation where we precondition cattle before we send them west. The FSA helped me to start with by getting the direct loan. I come from 4 generations of farmers and ranchers. I was able to purchase my grandmother's farm that connects to my parents' farm and keep it in the family. Here recently this year, we found out my husband, he actually broke his femur loading cattle, and we found out he has stage 4 cancer. So Kelly at the Spartanburg office had told me about the cash assistance loan that they had, and Daniel contacted me, and we were able to get that done. So y'all really helped me because, you know, it was really uncertain at the beginning of this year how it was going to go. So to be able to have that and have a year of, you know, okay, at least we have that covered, it's really been beneficial to my family, and I'm really glad to be a part of it.
How is your husband doing?
He was actually not able to be here today because he's getting his scan, so when I leave, I will find out. So he got a 3-month scan in September, and it was shrinking, but the cancer he has is actually renal cell carcinoma. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's stage 4 kidney cancer that moved to his bone, but he has no cancer in his kidneys. He has cancer in his hip and his femur, sorry. And so it is shrank, but there's not any chemo that can help it, so he does immunotherapy once a month, and we're just really hopeful. We were actually able to go to MD Anderson thanks to my mom and dad and some of their friends that donated for us to be able to go and get a second opinion, and they're very hopeful for the immunotherapy, but again, it's just really at the last trial phase, so it's still kind of a clinical trial, but we're praying and hoping that everything is okay.
Our prayers are with you.
Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I know Mayor Benjamin has a tight schedule and may need to excuse himself, so I just want y'all to understand that up front. Thank you, sir, for your participation. You know your schedule better than I do, and we'll all be understanding. Next, we'll hear from a rancher, Mr. Tyrone Chavis. Did I get out of order down here? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Tyrone Chavis from Lamar, South Carolina, Dalton County. I'm currently a cattle producer, in particular Black Angus. I am a 2nd generation rancher. My father farmed years ago and during the 70s. And things were difficult and challenging, and as a result, was foreclosed on. I was able, many years later, to regain that farm. But once I regained it, then the question was, what am I going to do with it? And then I began to find out about programs offered through USDA, in particular NRCS and Farm Service Agency. NRCS has been very instrumental in getting me established, from fencing to water lines to water tanks, etc. Currently doing what's known as a civil pasture. And a civil pasture is an area on your farm that can do a lot to relieve stress off your cattle during the summertime when it's very, very hot, whereas you have a lot of pine trees, loblolly, etc., and you have your grazing grass in that focal point. So normally cows will run away from the heat when it's hot like that, but with the civil pasture, they go ahead and remain out there, and they can eat and graze and remain healthy. I've benefited through NRCS as well as Farm Service. I've had to get loans for equipment upkeep and buying additional cattle. Without those agencies, I could not have gotten established to this point. I was pleased with what I've heard today from Mr. Vilsack in regards to the biomass, biofuel, and efforts to help the small farmers sustained. My goal is to sell direct from farm to table, wanting to figure out how to process the meat and just sell straight to the individuals, eliminating the middleman as discussed. And I work closely with my NRCS agents, Mr. English and the agency in my area, and I'm thankful for the opportunity.
There is, if you go on the website at USDA.gov, you'll find that there are 12 regional food business centers that we've set up. And I'm sorry, I should know what the center is for this area, but you can find it on our website. Those centers are now set up to help people understand how to access a local and regional food opportunity. In other words, those people would be able to help you figure out how to establish a direct marketing opportunity, and then may be able to identify resources that could be made available for you to get into that business. So USDA.gov, the website, just search for regional food business centers, and you'll get information about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Looks like we may get this done in time. No pressure, Mr. Huff. But we'll hear from James Huff, farmer and a rancher.
My name is James Huff, and I'm from Dawson County, and I serve as the advisor on the board of Dawson County. And I'm just a small farmer with little row crops and a few cows. And when you remember a few years ago, one year we had a big drought. The next year we had a flood. Couldn't do nothing with the crops, and I got a little behind on my payments. And after the insurance had paid off, I still had a big debt left. If it wasn't been for the Farm Service Agency, I would have been under. I wouldn't have been able to farm no more. And I am a second generation farmer, and I've been farming over 50 years. And because of the money they gave and the money they helped me with, I am able to maintain. And right now I'm even. You never heard a farmer yet to say he made money, but I'm even. My cow is concerned, I got a granddaughter, she just started in college at USC her first year, and she's more interested in farming than my sons or my grandchildren. She's a girl, and she loves animals, and every day I talk to her every day, and she'll say, "Papa, how the cows is doing?" I said, "We just had a new baby calf." She said, "Send me a picture." And maybe my sons or grandsons may not be a farmer, but she may be one. So I don't know, and I encourage her, but I thank FHA for, if it wouldn't been for them, I wouldn't be able to talk to her and tell her about the cows today. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huff. Legacy. Granddaughter starting school, asking about the cows. There's a lot of potential in that, sir. We thank you for your service. Finally, we'll hear from Reverend Jermaine Walker.
Good afternoon. I'll begin by first thanking my Lord and Savior for an opportunity to participate in this noble event. To Secretary Vilsack, thank you, sir, for creating this opportunity. Again, my name is Jermaine Walker. We are a family farm in Sumter, South Carolina. Our farm consists of a row crop operation of corn, wheat, soybeans, and cotton. Small, diverse beef cattle operation that my brother James run. Operate the main row crop operation with my brother-in-law Paul. So we're a family operation, a little bit of forestry, and a small amount of produce. We were contract growers. We were poultry growers for a Pilgrim's Company, a JBS parent company. And with that, I would like to thank the administration and the USDA, who was very essential when I lost the production contract. That part of the operation went into foreclosure. I had a guaranteed loan with one of the farm credit agencies. It was a rough ride, but we were able to save that operation. Unfortunately, there's nearly a $2 million poultry infrastructure sitting there going to waste because I can't gain another poultry contract. But we do thank you for being instrumental in retaining that part of the operation. Again, we shift, so to offset that, we try to go to high-value crops. We've started to plant a tremendous several hundred acres of cotton to offset some of the income we lost from the poultry operation. And to what you alluded to earlier, the last couple of years have been very lucrative on the commodities part, but the caveat to that was the inflation was left out. Paying nearly $4 fuel, and the price of inputs have more than doubled. So there are great numbers on the balance sheets as far as income is concerned, but there are also great numbers as far as expenses, with cotton going over almost $600 a bag for cotton. So we thank you for the administration for what's going on, but we kind of continue to encourage you to be vigilant into what's those of us, especially from my demographic of black row crop farmers. Land acquisition is very difficult for anybody, for any farmer, black or white, with real estate developers. So we're asking that the administration keeps a keen eye on the farming industry, and particularly the row crop farmers, black row crop farmers, as we continue to navigate waters outside of a pandemic and going into uncharted future waters as we determine what's the best avenue to sustain agriculture in America.
You know, that issue of land access is a tough one because of the value that development has placed on land. We've actually taken money from the American Rescue Plan, and we've basically made 50 different grants to organizations to study this issue and figure out if there are best practices and how we might be able to make land access more affordable and more available. We're looking forward to the product of those grants coming up with a series of recommendations that can then potentially be incorporated in what we do. And obviously we're cognizant of the concern about inputs, which is why we're investing resources in the fertilizers I mentioned earlier. You know, we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. You might want to talk to the rural development folks. I don't know if there's an opportunity here, but you might be able to talk to the rural development folks about ways in which they could potentially help reignite the poultry operation. There may be opportunities there. I would suggest that you may spend a few minutes with our Dr. Glover here, and maybe she's got some ideas, or her team's got some ideas about that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
I'll just say, thank you to President Conyers and the entire team for your hospitality here, and Mr. Secretary, you and Dr. Goldman, thank you all for allowing us to join you here. This type of feedback is what we actually really do need. It has both been informative, it helps us address and understand different challenges, but this has been downright inspirational as well. The future, I believe, all of us working together is very bright under the leadership of all of you and this man right here. I know our president, I'm vice president, we're very happy to hear a report out. So thank you, God bless you. If I want to make this plain, I'm going to be sleeping on somebody's couch here. I don't know who that is, but I got to get back to DC. So God bless y'all, all right?
Thank you, sir. Hey. Okay.
Commissioner, so there were two pots of money.
On the LFPA?
Well,
How did